She's broke. She can't even afford breakfast for her kids. That's what his lawyer said out loud in front of the judge with a smile on her face. I sat there gripping the edge of my seat, trying not to cry. My hands were shaking, but I refused to let them see me fall apart. The judge nodded slowly, like he agreed. And in that moment, I thought it was over, that I'd lose everything, that I'd lose them. But then, my 7-year-old son stood up. "Your Honor," he said, his voice clear. "Can I show you something I found in Dad's safe?" The courtroom went silent. Even my ex froze in his chair. And that letter, that folded piece of paper Liam carried in his tiny hand. It changed everything. My name is Olivia Carter. And this is the story of how I almost lost my children, and how my son saved us with 7 handwritten words. What would you do if your child stood between you and injustice? Have you ever been judged just for being poor? If this story reminds you of something real, something personal, tell me right below this video. And if you believe that sometimes the smallest voice in the room can speak the loudest truth, subscribe for more stories like this. Because this one isn't just about custody, it's about courage. I wasn't always the woman sitting alone in court with trembling hands and a secondhand blazer. Before all this, I had a steady job, admin support at a mid-sized logistics company in Portland. I paid my bills on time, split rent with my roommate, and even had a little savings. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. Then I met Nathan. He was charming in that slow, deliberate way that makes you feel chosen. Always dressed well, always saying the right thing at the right time. On our first date, he asked me what I wanted in 10 years. Not just in work, but in life. I told him, half joking, something that feels like peace. 6 months later, we moved in together. A year after that, we were married. Nathan didn't ask me to quit my job, not at first. But after Liam was born, he started planting the seed. "You're stretched too thin," he'd say. "We don't need the money. What we need is for Liam to have a full-time mom." He framed it like a gift. Like I had earned the right to rest. At the time, I thought it was love. So I stepped back from my job, from my friends, from the life I used to know. When Mia came along 2 years later, I barely recognized myself. I was living in a house Nathan bought under his name, using a credit card with his name on it. My days revolved around diapers, dishes, and keeping the peace. By then, Nathan had started changing. He wasn't cruel, not at first, just colder, quieter. Everything I did was too much or not enough. If I bought Liam sneakers without checking for sales first, he'd fall silent for hours. If I asked about working part-time from home, he'd remind me I hadn't updated a resume in 4 years. He'd say it softly, like a fact. "You'd never make enough to matter." That line stuck with me. You'd never make enough to matter. When he finally left out of the blue, no warning, just a packed bag, and a text that said, "We both know this isn't working." He emptied the joint account 2 days before. No savings, no credit, no backup. He moved in with someone new. Someone with no kids, no stretch marks, and apparently no baggage. And I was left behind, with 2 children, an overdue power bill, and a fridge that held 1 bottle of ketchup, 3 eggs, and half a loaf of bread. But I wasn't angry, not yet. I was in survival mode. I found 2 under-the-table cleaning jobs. I bathed the kids with boiled water from the stove when the heater broke. I cut up my old t-shirts to make cleaning rags, and through it all, Liam and Mia never complained. Mia would hum to herself while I scrubbed the bathroom floor. Liam once offered to share his peanut butter sandwich when I skipped lunch for the 3rd day in a row. We were broke, we were scared, but we were still together. And to me, that still meant everything. When the custody papers came in the mail, I sat on the kitchen floor for nearly an hour just staring at them. Petition for full legal and physical custody. Plaintiff Nathan Carter. No phone call, no discussion, just a packet of legal jargon that said in effect, "You don't count anymore." I read every word twice, 3 times, trying to find the part where it made sense. It didn't. His reasons: unstable housing. No income. Unfit mother. He didn't mention that I had no income because he told me to quit my job, that I had no stable housing because he locked me out of our shared bank account, that I was cleaning strangers' houses and hand-washing baby clothes in a bathtub, just to keep our lives moving. But on paper, he looked perfect. A new condo downtown, a luxury car. Photos of Liam and Mia smiling during weekends with him. private school brochures, a fridge stocked with name-brand yogurt. And me, I had a prepaid phone with 7 minutes left on it and a $28 grocery budget for the week. The legal clinic downtown offered free consultations on Tuesdays. I got there before sunrise and waited in line with a plastic folder full of crumpled receipts and hand-signed letters from Mia's preschool teacher. When I finally sat with a volunteer attorney, she sighed before I even finished. "Do you have a lawyer?" I shook my head. I barely had enough to keep the lights on. She pursed her lips and flipped through the papers. "It's going to be hard," she said. "Family court doesn't always know how to see beyond appearances." I walked out of there with a stomach full of dread and a borrowed blazer that didn't quite fit. Still, I showed up on the morning of the hearing. I dressed Mia in her best hand-me-down dress and put a little clip in her hair. Liam wore a button-up that was one size too small, but clean. As we walked toward the courthouse, Liam squeezed my hand. "Is it going to be okay?" he asked. I smiled, but it was the kind of smile that only reaches your lips, not your eyes. "Yes, baby," I whispered. "It's going to be okay." Inside the courtroom, I sat with my back straight, my heart pounding so loud I could barely hear anything else. Nathan didn't look at me, not once. His lawyer, Carla Dean, walked in like she owned the room. Designer heels, manicured hands, confident smirk. She flipped through her files with ease like she'd already won. When the hearing began, she rose and spoke with that clipped tone only lawyers seem to master. "Your Honor, our concern is stability. Mr. Carter provides a home financial security consistency. Ms. Carter," she paused for effect, "has no verified employment, no documented income, and was issued a late rent warning in February." I felt my cheeks flush. She didn't mention I had resolved that late notice within 3 days. She didn't mention I had sold my wedding ring to buy Liam a winter coat. She didn't mention the nights I skipped dinner so Mia could have seconds. She held up my bank statements like they were trash. She waved printouts of my old electric bill and said, "This is not a safe environment for 2 young children." I stayed silent, because I knew that in court silence sometimes says more than anger ever could. I looked at the judge. He wasn't cruel, just tired, like he'd seen too many of these cases and had already decided mine was the losing side. Then Carla delivered her final blow. "Why should she get the children," she said, "if she can't even afford to care for them?" That sentence landed like a slap. My throat closed. I could feel my heart breaking open right there in that sterile courtroom. I wasn't asking for luxury. I was asking for the right to tuck my children in at night, to keep them close, to hold their hands when they were scared. But to them on paper, I was just poor, and in a courtroom full of suits. Numbers win, emotions don't. The judge leaned back, folding his hands. He opened his mouth, and then I felt it. A small tug on my sleeve. I looked down. Liam, his eyes wide, voice quiet but firm. "Mom," he whispered, "can I show the judge the letter I found in Dad's safe?" At first I thought I misheard him. "What letter?" I asked, but he was already pulling a folded piece of paper from his coat pocket. And in that moment, I saw something in Nathan's face that I hadn't seen all day. Fear. Fear. That was the only word for what flashed across Nathan's face the moment he saw the paper in Liam's hand. His spine stiffened, his jaw locked. His lawyer leaned in, whispering something fast and sharp. But I wasn't looking at them. I was looking at my son. My 7-year-old boy, who just might have changed everything. "Liam," I said gently. "What is that?" He didn't answer me. His eyes never left the judge. "Can I give this to you?" "Your Honor," he asked. The room fell into a silence that wasn't just quiet. It was heavy, electric. Like the moment right before a thunderstorm breaks, the judge blinked. "Yes," he said slowly. "Bring it here." Liam walked forward, small and steady, past rows of polished shoes and cold stares. He stopped at the bench and held the letter out with both hands. The judge took it, unfolded it carefully, and read. His expression shifted gradually: confusion, then recognition, and then something colder. He looked up at Nathan, voice even but sharp. "Mr. Carter, would you like to explain this?" Nathan opened his mouth. Nothing came out. His lawyer leaned in again, this time, not whispering. "Nathan," she hissed, "is this real?" No answer. The judge looked back down and began to read the letter aloud. To Nathan Carter, subject strategic financial shielding, divorce preparation from L. Becker CPA. He paused, looked up at the room, then continued. This letter outlines the recommended steps to minimize financial loss in an upcoming custody proceeding. Actions include moving liquid assets into shell companies, establishing offshore accounts under alternate registration, deliberately reducing visible income through short-term restructuring, ensuring documentation reflects moral and financial superiority. Quote, keep primary custody if possible, but at minimum ensure she has little ground for legal appeal by appearing financially stable and morally sound. The judge stopped reading. The air inside the courtroom shifted like everyone had been holding their breath and now didn't know how to exhale. I didn't move. I couldn't. I sat frozen between disbelief and a quiet rising fury that had nowhere to go. I had suspected things, always the timing of the money transfers. The way Nathan suddenly became generous with visits right before court. The perfect photo ops, the missing transactions. But to see it in writing, to hear a judge say it out loud in front of my children, it was like being told you weren't crazy after years of gaslighting. The judge placed the letter down in front of him, folded his hands. Mr. Carter, he said, you attempted to mislead this court. You have manipulated financial records to gain an unfair advantage in a custody case. This is not just unethical, it borders on criminal. Nathan stood abruptly. That letter is old, it wasn't used. It's not even. Sit down, Mr. Carter, the judge snapped louder now. Even Mia looked up from her drawing at that. The judge turned to me. Ms. Carter, he asked, were you aware of this letter? I shook my head. No, Your Honor. I've never seen it before today and your son found it. Liam answered before I could. I was looking for my tablet at Dad's house, he said quietly. It was in a drawer in a folder. I didn't know if I should take it, but I thought it might help. The judge looked at him for a long moment. You did the right thing, young man. Then he turned back to the court. I will be pausing this hearing for a formal investigation into Mr. Carter's financial conduct. In the meantime, primary custody remains with Ms. Carter with temporary suspension of the defendant's parenting time until the matter is resolved. I didn't breathe. I couldn't. I heard the words, but they felt distant, like someone else's life was being rewritten in real time. Then it sank in. I had just been believed. Not pitied, not dismissed. Believed. The gavel came down, the courtroom dismissed. But I didn't move. Not right away. I sat there, both arms around my children, anchoring myself to the only truth I knew. Liam leaned in close. Did I mess up, Mom? I kissed his head, held him tighter. No, baby, I whispered. You saved us that night after the hearing. I didn't sleep. Not because I was afraid anymore, but because for the first time in months I felt something I didn't recognize at first. Relief, not victory, not closure. Just the fragile sense that maybe, just maybe, the truth had finally made it through. 2 days later, I got a call from the court. A financial investigator had been assigned to review Nathan's assets and conduct. Her name was Ms. Trent, and she didn't waste time. We met at a neutral office space in downtown Portland. She was sharp-eyed, quiet, and meticulous, the kind of woman who didn't blink when silence got awkward. She reviewed the letter Liam had handed over, asked for permission to access our old joint account records, tax filings, mortgage documents, everything. I said yes to all of it. Because I had nothing to hide. Nathan, on the other hand, he had plenty within a week. Miss Trent found shell companies registered in Delaware and Nevada. Accounts Nathan never disclosed in his financial affidavit. There were large wire transfers overseas, undisclosed assets, a vehicle purchased under someone else's name, even the so-called condo he'd boasted about in court, leased under a corporate entity with backdated payments. It was a house of cards, and it was collapsing. With each update I received from Miss Trent, I felt something inside me rebuilding, something I hadn't even realized I'd lost. My belief in my own memory, my confidence, my voice. For so long, I'd been told I was paranoid, dramatic, ungrateful. But the truth was in the spreadsheets now. The truth was sitting in court folders and official statements, and no amount of charm or fake smiles could bury it anymore. A month later, the final custody hearing was scheduled. This time, I walked into the courtroom, different. I wasn't in borrowed clothes. I wore a plain black dress I'd saved up for a blazer from Goodwill shoes that actually fit. And this time, I had a lawyer, a woman from the Domestic Support Advocacy Project, who took my case pro bono after hearing what happened in that first hearing. Her name was Cynthia, and when she stood beside me calm and unshaken, I finally felt something I hadn't in a very long time safe. Nathan looked different too. Gone was the smirk, the relaxed posture, the careless confidence. His new lawyer was younger, more reserved. She barely said a word unless prompted. When the judge entered, he didn't waste time. He addressed the courtroom directly. "This court has reviewed the results of the financial investigation into Mr. Carter," he said. "We have found substantial evidence of willful non-disclosure, asset concealment, and manipulation of income in an attempt to sway custody proceedings. These actions do not serve the best interest of the children." He turned to me, "Mrs. Carter, in light of your continued care for Liam and Mia, despite financial hardship and your full cooperation with this court, I hereby grant you full legal and physical custody of your children." I didn't move. "Not yet. I needed to hear the rest, Mr. Carter," the judge continued. "You are ordered to pay backdated child support, and any future visitation will be supervised, pending further court review." Then the gavel came down, once firm, final. Still, I didn't cry, not right away. I just sat there frozen until Mia leaned into my side and whispered, "Can we go home now?" That word home hit me harder than the ruling itself, because for the first time in months, I could say it back and actually mean it. "Yes, baby, we're going home." That night we made pancakes for dinner. Liam turned on the radio and danced with Mia on the scuffed linoleum floor. We laughed until it echoed off the cabinets. And when the kids were finally asleep, I sat on the floor of our tiny apartment, still in that black dress with my back against the fridge. I cried. Then, not because I was afraid, but because I wasn't anymore. I looked over at Liam, curled up in a blanket on the couch, clutching his sketch pad like always. He had drawn something new. A little house, 3 stick figures holding hands, and above it in his shaky handwriting were 5 words. "Home is where Mom is." That letter he found. It wasn't just a legal weapon, it was a lifeline. A crack of light in a room I thought I'd never escape from. And the one who held it was a child. My child who knew without being told that truth matters, even when no one else wants to hear it. It's been 6 months since the day Liam handed that letter to the judge. And still, every time I fold a piece of paper or zip up my coat to leave the apartment, I remember how that courtroom felt when the truth finally hit the air. The silence, the shift, the unraveling. It didn't fix everything. Nathan tried to fight back. Of course he did. He filed a motion to reduce child support, claiming his finances had suffered. Due to reputational damage, he tried to appeal the supervised visitation order. Said it was unfair, extreme, unnecessary, but the court wasn't buying it. The letter Liam found, the investigation it triggered, and the bank statements that followed were too solid. Nathan had built his entire argument on an illusion: perfect house, perfect dad, perfect life. But now the curtain was down, and no one was clapping. He showed up to 3 supervised visits. That was it. Then he stopped trying. And honestly, I didn't explain too much to the kids. Just enough for them to know the truth without carrying the weight of it. "Dad isn't ready to be consistent," I told them, "and you deserve people who show up and stay." They didn't ask much after that. Mia started sleeping through the night again. Liam began drawing trees, always with deep roots, wide branches, strong trunks. One night he asked, was I in trouble for taking the letter? I looked him straight in the eye. "No, baby," I said. "You were brave. You told the truth when it mattered most." He nodded once and leaned his head against my shoulder. That moment stayed with me, not because it was dramatic, but because it was quiet. Because children carry more than we think. And sometimes, they carry truth the way adults carry secrets. The final order came by mail a few weeks later. A thick envelope stamped and sealed. Inside was a signed document printed in bold letters: full physical and legal custody, granted to Olivia Carter. No red stamps, no conditions, no footnotes, just the truth. Finally given weight. I didn't frame it. Didn't even take a picture. I just folded it back into the envelope and tucked it away behind a drawer of old-school photos and hand-drawn cards. Because the real victory wasn't in the paperwork. It was in the normal things we got back. Like breakfast that wasn't rushed or silent. Like bedtime stories without the fear of losing them tomorrow. Like standing at the stove stirring oatmeal and realizing I was doing okay. More than okay, I was steady. I started seeing a therapist through a local women's center. At first, I didn't know what to say. I was used to pushing it all down, smiling when I wanted to scream, surviving when I wanted to rest. But healing, I've learned, needs air. You have to say things out loud before they stop controlling you. I talked about the nights I went hungry, about the months I didn't know if I was being paranoid or just ignored. I talked about the shame I carried, not just from being poor, but from being told that poverty made me unworthy. And my therapist said something I'll never forget. You weren't weak, Olivia. You were strong in silence, but you don't have to stay silent to be strong. That changed me. Slowly, I got a part-time office job. It's not glamorous, but it's consistent. I bought a used laptop and started taking online courses in bookkeeping. It turns out I'm good with numbers. Always have been, I just forgot that for a while. Mia made a new best friend at preschool. Her teacher says she's blossoming, chatty, curious, quick to help. Liam's art got featured in his school hallway. One drawing stood out, a tree big, rooted with 3 figures under its shade. He titled it with one word: growing. That's what we're doing now. Not perfectly, not all at once, but steadily. And every step forward feels like a quiet rebellion against everything we survived. Sometimes people ask me how I didn't break in that courtroom. The truth, I did a little bit every day. But I put myself back together in the minutes between breakfast and bath time, between bills and bedtime stories. Because when you're a mother, giving up isn't on the table. And when your child stands up in court, not to cry, not to beg, but to tell the truth, you remember exactly who you are. Not just a survivor, not just a mom, but the kind of woman who raised that kind of child. This story didn't end the day the judge gave me custody. That was just the day the fight paused and life began. Real life with burnt toast mornings, mismatched socks, budget spreadsheets, and laughter echoing in a space too small to hold it all. And I wouldn't trade a second of it. Not even the hard parts. Because now we live without fear. I still budget every grocery run down to the last cent. Still buy secondhand clothes. Still say no to little things other families probably take for granted. But I don't flinch at every envelope in the mailbox. I don't wake up wondering if today will be the day he takes them away. That silence, the one that used to press against my ribs like a vice, is gone. Now when I lie in bed at night, I breathe all the way to the bottom of my lungs. And sometimes, I even smile. Because peace, I've learned, doesn't mean having everything. It means not living every day, afraid of losing what matters most. Nathan still exists somewhere out there. He's quiet now. We haven't heard from him in months. The monitored visits faded. The legal attempts fizzled. I don't hate him. I don't wish him pain. I just want him to stay gone. Because this home, it's ours now. Not because of money or papers, or a gavel dropping in a quiet room, but because of love. Real, enduring love. The kind that makes oatmeal stretch further than you thought it could. The kind that sings lullabies through exhaustion and still remembers every word. The kind that looks like a folded letter carried in the coat pocket of a 7-year-old boy who saw injustice and stood up. Liam still talks about that day sometimes. One night, curled beside me on the couch, he asked, "Do you think I'll have to do something like that again?" I didn't lie. "I hope not," I said. "But if you do, I know you'll be ready." He didn't respond with words, just nodded. Like he understood more than he should. And maybe he did. Because truth isn't just something we speak. It's something we carry in how we show up, in how we protect each other, in how we refuse to break, even when everything says we should. The truth saved us that day, but it was love that kept us standing. That's what I want people to know, that survival isn't weakness, that showing up when you have nothing left, that's courage, that poverty isn't failure, that motherhood isn't measured in dollars, and that the smallest voice in the room can echo louder than any lie. So if you're in a place right now where you feel invisible, if you're holding it together with tape and stubborn hope, if you've been told you're not enough because your bank account doesn't match your love, I see you, and I promise you, you are more than enough. This story isn't special because of a courtroom victory or a legal twist. It's special because a little boy remembered what was right and didn't wait for permission to speak it. It's special because even when the world looked at me and saw less, my children looked at me and saw home, and now we're still here. Still growing, still laughing in a kitchen with a cracked linoleum floor and music playing off an old radio. We're building something? Not a perfect life, but an honest one. And that's more than I ever thought I'd have again. So if you've made it this far, thank you for listening. For believing in the kind of strength that doesn't shout, that folds laundry with one hand and wipes tears with the other, that takes the stand even when the world says sit down. Because sometimes, justice doesn't come in a tidal wave. Sometimes it comes in the quiet rustle of a letter, held in the hand of a child, offered in love, spoken in truth, and heard finally by the world. What did you think of Olivia's story? If you were in her shoes, what would you have done when Liam asked to speak? Let us know in the comments. And if you believe in truth and motherhood and love, that doesn't quit, subscribe to EN True Tales. Now we tell stories that matter because your voice matters too.